Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to be talking about what it means to summarize a story. When we summarize, we retell a story using our own words. There are a few important things we need to include in our summaries, and they're up here on the board. The first one is the who of the story. So that's who is the story about? Who are the main characters? So there's a little few people drawn up here to help you remember that. The next is the when of the story, and that's when the story took place. When in time, when during the day, just when it happened. So that's why there's a clock. The next one is where, and that's where in the world did this happen? Where. That's also the setting of the story. We talked about setting last week. So there's a globe to show you where it happened. And the next one is problem. So this is the big problem that our characters have. Our characters may have a few small problems, but then we want to know the biggest problem of the story. So I drew a little man going like this because he's got a big problem and he doesn't know what to do. And the last one is the what of the story. This is what are the main events that happen in the story. So I drew a roller coaster to remind us that what is all the big events that happen in a story. Like a roller coaster goes up and down, it has big turns and big loops. These are the big events of the story. So to help us practice summarizing, I'm going to read Knuffle Bunny 2. Knuffle Bunny 2, A Case of Mistaken Identity by Mo Willems. As I read, I'm going to look out for these specific things, and then we'll write them down when I think that I come across them. Knuffle Bunny 2, A Case of Mistaken Identity by Mo Willems. One morning, not so long ago, Trixie took a walk with her daddy. Already, I'm seeing some important things about this story. So, I see that this sentence says that this happened one day not too long ago. So it happened one day not long ago. And I can see from the story that Trixie is one of the characters. She was introduced right away. So that's telling me she's going to be a pretty important character. So Trixie is under our who. Okay, let's keep reading. By now, Trixie really knew how to talk. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to show Amy, and then I'll show Meg, and then I'll show Margot, and then I'll show Jane, and then I'll show Leela, and then I'll show Rebecca, and then I'll show Noah, and then I'll show Robbie, and then I'll show Tashi, and then I'll show Casey, and then I'll show Connie, and then I'll show Parker, and then I'll show Brian, and then talk and talk and talk. Trixie was excited because she was taking her one-of-a-kind Knuffle Bunny someplace very special. School. So I'm thinking that school is going to be a setting of the story. It's going to be under the where, because the story looks like it's going to take place sometimes at school. Trixie couldn't wait to show Knuffle Bunny to Miss Greengrove and all of her friends in pre-K. I'm thinking that Miss Greengrove is going to be one of the main characters in the story. Let's write her under the who. But just as her daddy kissed her goodbye, Trixie saw Sonia. Suddenly, Trixie's one-of-a-kind Knuffle Bunny wasn't so one-of-a-kind anymore. So I think that a pretty big part of the story might be Trixie and Sonia have the same Knuffle Bunny. So I'm going to put that under our what. The morning did not go well. Knuffle, Nuffle, Knuffle, Nuffle. The afternoon was worse. So look right here. Trixie and Sonia got their knuffle bunnies taken up. That seems like a problem, but I think that it may not be the biggest problem of our story. So I'm going to write that underneath the what and just say that it's a big thing that happened in the story. I'm also seeing that Sonia is now in a lot of the story, so I'm going to say that she's also one of our main characters. When the school bell rang, Miss Greengrove returned the Knuffle bunnies, and the day got better. Then, before she knew it, it was time to go home. Trixie ate her dinner, devoured her dessert, brushed her teeth, and tried to escape the mommy and daddy robots from Planet Snurp. At 1/2 past bedtime, Trixie was tucked in. So I'm going to say that Trixie being ready for bed is a big part of the story. I'm also seeing that another place where the story takes place is at Trixie's house. So let's add that to the where. At 1/2 past bedtime, Trixie was tucked in, ready for sleep. But a few hours later, Trixie realized something. I'm sensing that this may be our big problem. Trixie marched into her mommy and daddy's room and said, "This is not my bunny." So I think that this means that Trixie and Sonia got their bunnies mixed up. So I'm going to say this is the biggest problem for our story. So Trixie and Sonia have each other's bunnies is our big problem. Trixie's daddy tried to explain what 2:30 a.m. means. He asked, "Can we deal with these things in the morning?" Trixie's daddy went to the phone. Before he even made it down the stairs, ring! The phone rang. "We have your bunny," said a man's voice on the other end. "We have yours," replied Trixie's daddy. Arrangements were made. Trixie and her daddy rushed across the neighborhood. Trixie did not want to be late. Neither did Sonia. There was an exchange, and the Knuffle bunnies were back where they belonged. I think this is another big thing that happened in our story, another what. So Trixie and Sonia got their bunnies back. was so worried about my bunny, said Sonia. So was I, replied Trixie. Then they both said, I'm glad you got your bunny back, at the exact same time. And that's how Trixie found her first friend. Knuffle Bunny accepted, of course. The end. So, I'm going to say that our last big event is that Trixie and Sonia became best friends. So, when we write a summary, we want to include the most important details. And as we read a story and we're looking for the who, when, where, problem, and the what, we may write down some details that are not that important because we haven't read the whole story yet, so we don't know what's important and what's not important. So I'm going to go back through and see if I can see anything that I put down that is not a most important detail. So first, let's start with the who. So we have Trixie, Miss Greengrove, and Sonia. Trixie and Sonia are definitely main characters in the story. The story is about them and their Knuffle bunnies. So they're definitely main characters, and they're definitely part of the who of the story. But Miss Greengrove isn't in that much of the story. She doesn't have that big of a part of the story. So I'm going to say that she's not a main character, so I'm going to mark her off. The next is the when. So the when is one day, not too long ago. That is all that Mo Willems tells us about when this story happened. So that's definitely important because that's the only thing we know about when this story happened. The next is where. So we have school and at Trixie's house. So part of the story takes place at school and part of the story takes place at Trixie's house. So I say those are definitely the two most important settings. And we only have one problem written down, and Trixie and Sonia have each other's bunnies is definitely the biggest problem of our story. So that one's going to stay. Now for the what. So we're looking for the big events, the most important events, not the tiny small ones. So let's see if we have any small ones in here. The first one is Trixie and Sonia have the same bunny. That's pretty important because that's why they get them mixed up in the first place. And then they got their bunnies taken away, which is also an important part of the story. The next one we have written down is Trixie gets ready for bed. Now, I don't think that that's a very important detail to know. That's not a big part of the story, and if I was going to retell this story to somebody, that's not a detail that they need to know, so I'm going to take it off. Our next detail is they got their bunnies back. That's so important because they came together to fix the problem that they had when they had each other's bunnies, and then they got each other's bunnies back. And that led them to Trixie and Sonia becoming best friends. And that's important because that's what our story is all about. This whole story is about them getting their bunnies mixed up and how they became best friends by getting their bunnies back from one another. So, now that we have our chart filled out and everything is a most important detail, we're going to be able to retell the story and have a summary of Knuffle Bunny 2. So, a summary of Knuffle Bunny 2 would look something like this. One day, not too long ago, Trixie went to school. Trixie and Sonia had the same bunny. They got their bunnies taken away. Then when Trixie went home, she was playing with her family and she went later on and realized that her bunny got mixed up with Sonia's bunny, so that she realized she needed to get her bunny back. So they got their bunny back, and because of that, Trixie and Sonia became best friends. So that is a really short way to talk about Knuffle Bunny 2 and to summarize it. Summarizing is so important because we can use it to tell our friends what happened in a story without them having to read the whole thing. When we summarize, we need to look out for the who, when, where, problem, and what of a story. because those tell us the most important things about a story and what we're going to need to know to summarize.